Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome to the Front Row Movie Reviews, the podcast for people who actually like movies and TV. And welcome to our second episode of Discovering Star Trek, our first real episode where we'll be reviewing the first episode of Star Trek Discovery, the Vulcan Hello, or I like to call it the Dutch Angle Hello. I want to do something up front here. First off, I'm Scott, by the way. With me today is...
Mike.
This is where you say Kevin.
And Kevin.
There he goes. He's there. Kevin is new to us. Kevin, welcome to First the Front Row. We always do something with people who are brand new to us, and that is ask you, what is your favorite movie?
The Hunt for October.
I'll take it. Jack Ryan. Nothing wrong with that.
Solid choice.
We'll also talk to you a little bit about your Star Trek bona fides here in a second. But before I do that, I want to do a little upfront. CBS, as Mike and I kind of talked about last week on our first episode, CBS is trying very hard to make it impossible for you to watch the show. They aired episode 1, which we'll be talking about here in a moment, on CBS. It was preempted by 18 minutes for football and 60 minutes. So I got to watch Oprah Winfrey try to be a journalist for a while. That was fun. And then immediately when it started airing, they put both episode 1 and episode 2 on CBS All Access. And from now on, at 7:30 Central Standard Time, they will be releasing on Sundays. They'll be releasing episodes in order. So episode 3 will drop next Sunday. And because this back and forth between the network and online and all that, we want to make sure that we don't spoil anything for people who may not have seen episode 2. So we're going to try very hard, Mike. We're going to try very hard to only discuss episode 1 on this podcast. And then we'll immediately record our podcast for episode 2, The Battle of the Binary Stars. So we'll release both at the same time. So if you are looking for our discussion of episode 2, which obviously gets a lot more into what the show's going to be about, just check out episode 2 right after you're done with episode 1. And then after that, we'll just record an episode review each Sunday as they come out. So that being said, first off, because Kevin is new, I've known Kevin for quite some time, over a decade now, almost 2 decades now, and he messaged me and said that, hey, he's a nerd too and wants to talk Star Trek. So Kevin, real quick, before we get into this episode, tell us a little bit about your Star Trek bona fides. I mean, why do you like Star Trek? What's your favorite series? Stuff like that.
My favorite series is Deep Space Nine. However, I remember my first vivid memory of Next Gen was The Best of Both Worlds. I'm sure I saw parts of season 2 and 3 before that, but that's my first real vivid memory. Obviously, I've seen all that series, and I think the only series I haven't seen every episode is actually the original. There's some of those I just have not slogged through, but otherwise I've seen all there is. And I remember growing up with Star Trek, 1 through 4, as a kid. 2 and 3 are very, very special to me, as is 6. But I think my favorite has got to be 2. Have to disagree with you a little bit there, Scott. I know you like 6 a lot, and you should, but I think 2 is my favorite.
I got no problem with 2. I just think it may also be because obviously 2 came out and was in theaters before I was born. Came out a year before I was born, and so I saw that on beta and VHS. But Star Trek 6 is the first one, I believe, that I saw in theaters. So that may do something with it too. But also I think it's a really good movie.
Yeah.
Okay, so we did that with Mike last time, so we'll skip over that part. So how we're going to do this is when we tend to review movies and TV, we'll kind of talk about our first impressions of the show. We'll then talk about what we liked and then what we didn't like. And because this is going to be a serialized show, we'll do predictions. Now I know the predictions are going to be a little wonky on this one because we've seen episode 2, but we can do like series long predictions as well. So first off, let's go ahead and talk about our first impressions for Discovery, based on going into watching the first episode and then after checking out the first episode. Mike, we'll go to you first.
Oh boy. So I know I feel like we kind of covered this last time you and I did, but I don't know. Going into it, I feel like I really didn't have any expectations. But I'm reeling right now because I did watch the first 2 episodes, and thus far I've really enjoyed it. So I don't know what
That's
to
all
say
you got.
right now.
You're surprised that you actually enjoyed something you weren't expecting to enjoy.
Yeah. I was pleasantly surprised by the fact, and I think we kind of talked about this, a lot of the previews, the trailers and things all seemed like they showed the same, snippets. And we kind of talked about the fact that as trailer 2 came out and trailer 3 came out, and it was just more of the same. And I was kind of concerned about what that alluded to. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like a good chunk of everything we saw in the trailer consisted of about the first 5 minutes of the first episode.
Yeah.
And I was pleasantly surprised to find out that there was a lot more to it than that.
Kevin, what about you?
I also had low expectations, and I also enjoyed it more than I thought that I would. As I mentioned to you, Scott, I don't like the almost complete redesign of the look of the Klingons. But that's something that you're gonna unfortunately or fortunately find, depending on your point of view, in lots of reboots and redesigns, especially with lots of time gap in between. When you bring on new people, they want to put their own stamp on it, and I'm not the biggest fan of that, but I can't say that I hated it. There was enough continuity there to not make it get in the way too much of my enjoyment of the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat you guys are. I'm gonna watch these 2 again, probably tomorrow, just to kind of let it sink in more. But I came in with middle to low expectations just because of all of the trouble that this show has gone through. For one, it's almost exactly 51 years to the day that the original series aired, which is pretty impressive. But when you think about it, this show was supposed to come out for the 50th anniversary. So it has been delayed for almost a year. And part of that was the showrunner left. And if you watch the opening credits, created by Brian Fuller is the tag, and story for both episode 1 and episode 2, Brian Fuller. So
And Kurtzman.
Yeah, and so I'm interested to see what happens now, because even the writers said that this show has 2 pilots, and what we have seen is pilot 1, which is basically how we get to Discovery, but for so far so good. I question some of the directing. I already kind of joked about it. Do we need Dutch angles in every single shot that we have? And I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to like Michael as a character yet. But for first impressions, I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm looking forward to episode 3 at this point. Mike, what do you got?
I already like Michael as a character much better than I liked Sasha on The Walking Dead. So
That's true.
There we go.
That's true. I was concerned because I have no problem with the actress, but because her character rubbed me the wrong way so much in Walking Dead, I had the same concern.
Yep.
But she's a good actress. I'm kind of the character choices, which we'll talk about here, and we'll talk about much more in episode 2. I don't know if I'm going to like them or not, but we'll see how it goes. So
I feel like I'm going to have a lot more to say in this when we talk about the second episode about her character. But first impression from the first episode, I felt like it was an interesting way to involve a Vulcan-like character without making them a full Vulcan like they've done in three series now. But in the same way, as you guys alluded to in the your last review, it does make the universe kind of small to involve another character like Sarek that we've seen before many times.
Yeah, but you make a good point there. I mean, usually on a bridge of a starship, for one reason or another in Star Trek, you have to have either somebody who either is a Vulcan or has the same kind of lack of emotional mentality. So TNG, we had Data, obviously. So I think it is interesting that they're going with that trope again, but trying to make it a human this time. So that is interesting.
Now, I mentioned last time that I have not watched Enterprise, but I know you have. Now, was there not something said in Enterprise regarding the fact that Federation starships at one point or another had to have a Vulcan officer?
No, in fact, T'Pol in Enterprise wasn't a Starfleet officer up until I think maybe the last season she was. But
Right.
She was there basically as a babysitter because the Vulcans gave not the Federation at the time, the Starfleet, their star charts. And so they said, we're not going to let you go out mingling with races unless we're with you, so we're going to send T'Pol to watch you.
Okay, so I guess...
Yeah.
So I guess following that trend, maybe there's something a little bit still going on to that effect here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, potentially, yeah. And I'm sure we can talk about more about that too with episode 2 as well. But here we kind of see that as well too. Kevin, did you have something you want to add there?
No.
Okay. So let's talk about some of the things we liked about the episode. We already kind of did that a little bit, but we're past first impression now. So let's just spoil the hell out of the episode. And warnings, spoilers ahead. So, Kevin, let's start with you on this one. What are some of the things that actually you enjoyed about the episode that you were happy about?
I was pleasantly surprised by the production value. I thought the set design and the special effects were all pretty good. I wasn't expecting a ton, given the fact that they're making this for non-broadcast television, and yet it all looked very good from what I could glean in the first time going through it. I, like you, will probably watch it again just to pick it apart just a little bit more, but usually I don't change my opinions too much on something, and I fairly enjoyed it, and I was surprised.
Mike, what about you?
I'll echo that. I thought the production value was really top notch. There were a number of things that I was kind of like on edge about going into this, and kind of already feel a little bit better. Largely, it's the fact that we talked a lot about how much the fact that it's a prequel, not just a prequel, but it's a prequel that wedges in between two other pieces of established continuity and kind of that razor's edge that it was going to have to walk. And so far, nothing really bothered me about that. I feel like it's disconnected enough from all of the other storylines that it wasn't an issue. Nothing was super apparent aside from, as Kevin pointed out, the cosmetic changes to like the Klingons. And even there, it was familiar enough that I was not super bothered by it. And I know that there will be people who are super bothered by it, but it was okay for me. There were a couple other little like subtle things. I really appreciated the character interactions among the bridge crew of the I'm going to pronounce it wrong, the Shenzhou.
That's right.
Okay. I felt like they were saying it differently on the show. But yeah, they already kind of had a little bit of the back and forth banter between themselves. You could tell some of the characters had, some history together, familiarity with each other, the kind of thing that you would expect aboard, a bridge crew of, the Enterprise Deep, the guys playing poker together and that kind of thing. So I thought that was a nice touch. That was some little extra character love to add into the mix.
Yeah, and the production value, I agree with both of you. Say what you will about Enterprise, and its first season was not really impressive at all. But up until this point, Broken Bow, which was Enterprise's premiere, was the most cinematic looking premiere of all the Star Trek shows, and I think this tops it in terms of look. And it's interesting because Broken Bow also deals heavily with the Klingons too, and it's kind of almost ties into it because they mentioned that the Klingons really haven't been a problem for the Federation for 100 years. Well, they're referring to some of the things that we dealt with in Enterprise, so that's a good continuity piece there. And I also like the character interactions. You know, one of the characters that I'm very happy that I was wrong about was I'm going to pronounce his name wrong too at this point because I haven't really heard it said too much. Saru.
Yep.
Okay, played by Doug Jones, who I like. Doug Jones. He always plays goofy people in makeup. He was Abe in Hellboy and Hellboy 2. But when they kept showing that one line in the trailer where he says, "I've been bred to sense death," I was like, that is stupid as hell. What is he, like a psychic or something? But no, he played it off as it's evolutionary. I'm used to being hunted, so I can tell when I'm being hunted.
I actually kind of liked that.
Yeah, when it expands into context, that line makes perfect sense. So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, I agree. That was one of those lines that was so lame sounding in the trailer, but when you've, as you said, added context to it, and it's actually got this whole history behind it that somebody sat down and like thought of, I'm like, oh, that is really cool, and I really liked the character.
Go ahead, Kevin.
This might be one of those instances where the fact that I didn't see a lot of the pre-production, trailers and some of the other, little snippets they put, maybe that was a good thing in a way because I didn't have a preconceived notion about that, and I thought that was a really interesting character piece with him. Is his race one that we've seen before? I don't recognize it, and I don't think we have seen it before.
No, he's listed. I'm looking now as a Kelpian.
Okay.
And if we have dealt with them, it hasn't been to a point where I would remember it. And aside from Voyager, I think I've seen every single episode, and so I don't think I've seen them before. Again, with Doug Jones being a great actor too, he's got that wonderful little tick where he clicks his teeth every now and then. It's just little stuff that makes the character better. I'm also interested to see which some of these bridge crew members who will carry on into episode 3. I mean, some of them we know will carry on until episode 3, but I'm interested to see who carries on. But we do know, just based on the trailers and everything else, that Saru is going to carry on, and he'll be on Discovery as well as the Shenzhou. A couple other things I liked, going back to the continuity piece. Kevin, I agree with you on the look of the Klingons, and I'm sure we'll talk about that when we get to things we didn't like. But I do like the fact that they are playing into the history as we know it of the Klingons. First off, in the opening, before even the credits rolled, we got a mention of Kahless in the Warring Houses, which was really, it's something that, you could have not had dealt with. You could not have mentioned Stovacor. No one's going to care except for the geeks like us. But the fact that they're throwing little things like that in there tells me that at least whoever wrote this understands a little bit about the Klingons. Along those same lines, we got the mention of the Prime Directive right off the bat, which may not even be called the Prime Directive yet, General Order 1. And this really struck me as the scene with them trying to bring water back to this race that we're just never going to deal with again, I'm sure, is some of the most Star Trek-y stuff we've seen in quite some time. The fact that they're just there to help other people. There's no other reason to do it. These guys are just going to die if we don't do it, so let's just go down there and do it. I'm not sure what I feel about the let's walk out a Starfleet symbol and get beamed up, but
yeah,
that was kind of whatever. But the whole idea of them being on the planet, which honestly was one of the few things I liked about Into Darkness, was that first opening scene where, again, they're trying not to violate the Prime Directive while still doing what they need to do, which is very TOS. But yeah, I'm sure there's more, but for episode 1, that's what I got. So anything else of things we liked before we move into things we didn't like? Okay, good. Things we didn't like. Kevin.
I already alluded to it's a complete character look, wardrobe look, redesign. They kept the Klingon caste system, which really haven't done a lot with. Even in Deep Space Nine, I think that probably got into the most of that. They really, they kept that, but otherwise haven't gone a lot into it. But I just can't say that I like especially the wardrobe. I thought that looked really hokey.
Well, you don't like armadillo Klingons?
Yeah, I don't know. This is one of and I don't want to get into it too much, but this is one of the things that I didn't like about the Abrams movies. It was that Abrams was so interested in putting his own stamp on it that he had to change, well-established things that really, some of them mattered and some of them didn't. But the bottom line was he just couldn't leave well enough alone.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you there, but at least we don't have CGI ridges. I still think Abrams' Klingons from Into Darkness are the most god-awful things I've ever seen. So I'm happy that at least they took it back a little bit here. It's all prosthetic makeup. Mm-hmm. I think some of them should have hair. That just looks goofy as hell. Even in TOS they had hair, whether ridges or not. And we'll talk more about the Klingons in episode 2 because we get to see the council for a few minutes. But yeah, I completely agree with the look of them. But I am happy that we're getting some of the stuff that we got from TNG and that world building for the Klingons. I'm not entirely sure how you can get a beacon that is 100 billion lumens or whatever it was to work, but sure.
Yeah.
And how far away were they from Kronos that these guys could show up before the Federation could show up, which was in the exact same area as the Shinzu, but whatever. I guess it's a bad signal or something. I'm just kind of meandering now. Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, if everybody knows which direction to look, I don't know.
Well, even Sarek said we have a new star in the sky. Is that what you're calling me?
Yeah, well, apparently they had a guy whose job it was to just sit there and wait to get the phone call to light the thing, kind of like Lord of the Rings. So, who's to say there isn't a guy on Kronos whose job it is to sit in a chair and stare up, wait for that new star to appear, Yeah, and damn, that thing has to have moving parts, of course, because everything has moving parts nowadays. I don't know. I'm trying to think of stuff that I really didn't like about the show, and to be perfectly honest, there wasn't a lot. I mean, I'm with you on the Klingon wardrobe and stuff. They put their own stamp on it. I don't hate it. I don't love it either, though.
I will say this: I'm not hooked yet. I don't feel an instant connection to it like I did some of the other series. I don't know that if I wasn't an uber Star Trek nerd that I would be paying for a CBS All Access to, for this. And I saw some of their other offerings, and it was a little impressive, but not overly so. But I'm not at a point yet where it's going to be must see TV and I've got to see it. So we'll see how it progresses. I am interested to see how Jason Isaacs is going to work himself into the series. I've liked his work quite a bit over the years, and I'm interested to see him in a non-villainous role.
We'll see.
I still think he is the bad guy, but we'll see.
Oh, okay.
I just think because it's Isaacs. I mean, ever since The Patriot and him gunning down little kids, I just assume he's a bad guy in everything he's in. But no, well, I'm sure we'll talk about this too with the next episode as well. But part of me thinks this may have been a mistake, but I'm also really impressed that they decided to go with it. Obviously, Discovery is going to be the most serialized Star Trek we've seen. DS9 was pretty serialized in the latter seasons, but it wasn't one story the whole way through. And from what we're being told, Discovery is one story. There may be a couple one-offs here and there, but the idea of the war with the Klingons will be the main point of this story. So it's pretty impressive to me that they made the narrative choice that before we get you to Discovery and the people we're going to be dealing with for all of this season, if not future seasons, we need to tell you how we got there, and that means we need to show you an entirely different crew. We need to show you an entirely different ship, and for 2 episodes, you're not going to see the Discovery. You're not going to see the captain of the Discovery, played by Isaacs, and for some people that may be like a put off, but narratively, I think it's bold. I don't know if it's going to be good or not because we haven't seen part 3 or episode 3, but it's definitely, they got some courage for doing it, I think.
Yeah. Season 3 of Enterprise was an entire season-long story arc. And
Right.
and the 4th season, they were doing 2 to 3 episode short story arcs and then moving on to something else. I'm interested to see how this is going to be because TNG was almost completely episodic from start to finish. And as you alluded, DS9 was starting to get to a point in the later seasons that wasn't, and Voyager was pretty much episodic. But
except for Janeway's continued quest into madness, that was pretty much serialized. Yeah.
Oh, we'd have an entire review to do on that. So.
Oh, don't worry. Well, we're going to have some fillers because CBS is going to make us take a break for 2 months because they want to. They're hoping that you'll keep that subscription November and December, even though you're not going to get any Star Trek episodes out of it. Maybe I guess you can watch Big Brother season 29,000, whatever it is.
Yeah, no,
Any of
they're even to the point where you can go all the way back to watch old Odd Couple Classic and watch I Love Lucy episodes. I was kind of looking through it, and they've got a few movies in there too. So they have launched. I don't know how long this has been out, but they're really trying to launch it with Star Trek. And from what I've seen so far, it's not terrible as far as their offerings.
A ringing opinion, a ringing endorsement of CBS All Access. It's not terrible. I gave up Hulu for a couple months for it, so we'll see how it goes.
There was a lot more content on there than I thought there was going to be, so I was pleasantly surprised by that.
Well, and that is one of the things that CBS has going for it. Being one of the big 3, their library is immense, which is a reason why Disney finally realized that when they probably saw the returns they were getting off their Netflix contract, and they said, we could do this on our own. So CBS is thinking the same thing. Why buy into Hulu, where Fox, ABC, NBC, and all the rest are getting part of the cut when we have probably one of the biggest libraries out there? Let's just throw it all out there and we'll make some money off of it. And this is the second original.
I wonder if they're going to pull all. I wonder if they're going to pull all the Star Trek series off of Netflix and put them on CBS All Access only.
Part of that, though, and I don't know all the legal parameters of it, but when Viacom broke in 2 and you had Paramount and CBS, Paramount got the rights to some things and CBS got the rights to others. So I know for a fact CBS has the rights to TOS, but I don't know where the UPN stuff went. So Voyager and Enterprise, I'm not sure who really owns that. And with TNG and Deep Space Nine, I'm not sure who owns that either because those were syndicated as well. So I don't know if CBS could actually do that or not. I'll be interested to see if they could pull it off Netflix.
I'm sure they would if they could.
Yeah, I think so too. I think everyone's trying to beat Netflix at its own game. And the funny thing is, we owe Netflix for this show because when CBS started looking at this, they went out to Netflix and said, do you want in on this for everything but the United States? So if you're anywhere but the United States watching Discovery, you're watching it on Netflix. And from what the CEO of CBS, Les Moonves, said, our president of CBS, said, Netflix basically paid for season 1. So CBS is already in the black because they didn't put a dime into season 1. Netflix's deal paid. So Netflix put up a pretty penny, which is why the rumors are Netflix is not happy because they were promised a show in January, and now here we are in September. So we'll see how Netflix feels now that they can actually release this thing.
Well, and of course, Netflix is also currently kind of rolling back their original programming because they have, flipped the bill for so many different series in the past year or two. They've blasted the world with content, and now they're starting to roll it back. And unfortunately, some really good shows have taken the axe for it already. I believe like Sense8. I don't think they.
Sense8 is done.
Yeah, their quality hasn't stayed consistent like it was initially at all.
I still
It's
think
true.
the probably one of their big pushes is always going to be oh my goodness, wow, ignore me, I've just lost my mind. But no,
Marvel Universe.
well,
Marvel.
no, that was one of them, and actually, that wasn't what I was going to say. But a story came out yesterday saying that the Defenders was the least watched of all the Marvel series on Netflix so far. So take that as you
Wow.
will. Their Avengers was the least watched. So
Well, it's because Iron Fist directly preceded it.
I think you're right. And the guy who made Iron Fist is making Inhumans. So have fun with that, kids.
Yeah, which is
But
also a giant tank right now.
Yeah.
But back to Star Trek. Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about with Episode 1, the Vulcan Hello? The one thing I do want to hit on, because her decision is made here in Episode 1 and it's followed through in Episode 2, I do want to know where you guys stand on Michael's decision to literally commit mutiny in Episode 1, and the fact that she feels that firing on the Klingon ship first is the way to go. And when her captain says that's a stupid idea, she knocks her captain out using a nice little Vulcan nerve pinch and readies to open fire. And she didn't get a chance to shoot, but she did target the ship. And we know from a previous scene that they know when they're getting targeted. So she definitely made the first hostile act there.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think about that?
It felt sudden. It felt kind of forced in a way, especially after they made a big point of talking about how those two characters have served together for it was like 7 years or something. I hope I'm not dipping into Episode 2 because there were flashbacks.
No, you're not.
Okay, good.
You're good so far.
It's their first scene.
Okay, good. But yeah, it did seem a little sudden, a little forced, a little bit like, if these two characters have been together for so long and they have this like deep admiration for one another, and it sure seems as though, Michael's character is less Vulcanized than I can't say more than that right now. Why would she not have made more of an effort to sit down with her captain and try to explain things? Would she not have run off to the back room and had a private phone call with Sarek?
Yeah, I agreed. And we've been told that they have known her for 7 years. She's been on the crew for 7 years. You think these guys would have a better rapport than, I'm just going to knock your ass out when I disagree with you?
It's unusual.
Well, they went out of their way to show that she was getting the benefit of the doubt in a couple other earlier scenes, and then all of a sudden she disagrees with her on the bridge, can't pull her into a meeting to have a rational discussion with her, and then takes the most illogical step that I can imagine, and going against a captain in a military situation. Not a good decision. Not a good decision at all.
No.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why I'm not sold on Michael as a character yet, because you are the first officer of a starship, and we are told in no uncertain terms you're up for command, and you're going to be getting a command very soon. Obviously not now, but you should have a little bit more intelligence in terms of being able to kind of figure out if you want to do something, having a way of doing it other than committing mutiny on a starship. Not to mention, I think the idea of shooting at a Klingon first is probably not the smartest thing to do. You're not a Vulcan ship. We also know, too, and this is just continuity from previous shows, the Vulcans are really advanced, like hundreds and hundreds of years advanced to the humans. So even Sarek says, I'm not entirely sure this is going to work on a human ship, so you may not want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, they were under, as she saw it, extreme pressure, obviously, and to Sarek's point, it's like, I don't know if this is going to work for you, but this is probably the best option that I see to put out there. But it didn't feel like there was any amount of time where she honestly tried to explain her case to the captain and explain where this all came from and why and etc. So
she just contradicted her on the bridge and then expected she was going to have the captain do what she wanted to and not basically swat her down like the junior officer that she clearly is.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I want to argue with somebody, the first thing I do is call them out in front of like all of their peers, like.
Yeah.
But we did learn that there is soundproofing on ready rooms, which is probably a good thing. So, but yeah, and the other thing that I didn't like about that characterization is the way she tried to explain herself. And she does it once in this episode, and she'll do it again in the next episode. Is I was trying to save you and everyone else. I'm like, so that's not your job. Your job is to follow orders and to not get an interstellar war going. That's your job.
It was, again, kind of an inconsistent thing where she's either this coldly logical quasi-Vulcan that's trying to, like, make the hard call that no one else will make, but then, it's coming from my heart.
And she makes first officer in 7 years over other people.
Yeah.
I think Saru has a complaint about that.
But at least she didn't make captain on her very first voyage. Oh, I'm sorry.
Why you gotta bring up old stuff?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, Kurtzman is involved, so we have to kind of make fun of that anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Well, if you've listened to my Transformers podcast, you know how I feel about them.
But Kurtzman isn't really too involved. I mean, he's not showrunner. And he's off making Universal's movies terrible. So really, I don't think Kurtzman's going to have too much of a play. Probably most like Brian Fuller. He's going to have his name on everything, but after this, it's going to be new folks in charge.
I don't know, man. It might be enough that he's touched it. Like, what is it, Lorenzo de Bonaventure or whatever?
The only
just to rub his dick on everything and make it a little bit shittier. So.
Thank you for that. Now we have the explicit rating. I appreciate it.
Sorry, whoops.
iTunes. But the other thing I do want to complain about before we wrap this up is the holograms. This is the one thing that really pissed me off about continuity. We're 10 years before Kirk and Spock. We're 70 some odd years after Enterprise. About 50 to 60 years ago, we had a war with the Romulans where we couldn't see each other. That's canonized in both TOS and Enterprise. And now instead of view screens, we have holograms that not only are holograms but can walk around our ship. And like Sarek sits on a table.
Yeah.
That annoyed the hell out of me.
And we can get into that a lot if we want to. I mean, in the original show, they said it was 3 weeks from neutral zone to Starfleet Command. So I don't know how much we want to go down that road, but you do have to give the writers a little bit of license. I mean, we are 51 years after the debut of the original show, so you gotta give them a little bit of license. And maybe I'm a little too strict at times, but.
No, I want my little tape drives that you put in.
I think the thing about this show is that with Nick Meyer in the writing room, hopefully he stays there. I'm going to give them a little bit more leeway and a few more episodes than I may some other show because I have so much trust in him. And I just hope that he is able to guide it in a way that we hope that he can.
It's a good point. We haven't really discussed Nicholas Meyer yet, and we haven't had an episode written by him yet, but I know based on what we've read, he was very involved after the initial story was created. So I think this Shinzu narrative, I don't know if Nick was really involved with, but as soon as we get to episode 3, he was definitely in the writer's room at that point. So I am looking forward to that as well. We'll go ahead and we're going to wrap things up here. First thing first, I want to do a little bit of brief predictions, mainly from Kevin, I think, because Mike and I kind of did our own predictions and nothing's kind of bore out yet. But I want to hear from you guys where you think this series is going, again, knowing that we have seen episode 2, but I think in general where you think this series is going. And then after that, we'll do a rating of both this episode and also of all the pilots. I think we'll do that too real quick. So, Kevin, what are some predictions you have for season 1 of Discovery?
Well, I think the show is going in a direction. It seems kind of obvious that they're going to do the Klingon War. I think that doing a show based on one story arc is going to be an interesting take, and again, something they haven't done a lot. But you really got to like the story arc if you're going to do that, because you can't change gears real easily. So I hope they don't stay with that for an entire series run. I think a season or two might be a little bit more palatable to people. I would like to see them get into the Romulans, but I don't know if that's in their plans or not.
Yeah, I don't know about Romulans just because Romulan War is over. It happened actually in the interim of Enterprise, when Enterprise jumped ahead a couple years to do their finale, which is depressing. They should have had a chance to do it. But we're told in Balance of Terror that human ships haven't seen the Romulans since then. So I don't know if – I mean, they could definitely try to play like –
That's right.
Yeah,
you're right.
But Enterprise has done it. Enterprise did it before. Like we didn't meet the Ferengis until TNG. So when the Ferengis show up on Enterprise, everyone's knocked out, and so they don't get to see them. I mean, there's stupid stuff that Star Trek could do to make it work, but I don't know if we'll see them. But I agree with you on the serialization. I don't know if they can run with this Klingon story for too long. But at least when Brian Fuller was making the show, the word anthology was bounced around quite a bit. So there were some thoughts of potentially bouncing around Star Trek history, and maybe this is the only time we'll see this Discovery crew as season 1. If they don't do well in the ratings, I know this will be the last time we see the Discovery crew. But I'm
going to have a lot more to say about it in our second episode.
Agreed.
Given the added information about
agreed.
The Michael character.
Mm-hmm. Mike, you have anything else you want to add?
This is the first episode. I feel like we probably should really at least briefly touch on a couple of things. One of which is the title sequence.
Oh, I forgot to say how much I hated the title sequence. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I actually kind of liked it, to be honest. I thought. It obviously, well, okay. It was obviously a departure from TOS, TNG, Voyager, DS9. It was obviously not a departure from Enterprise.
There was no Fate of the Heart here.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Although I liked Fate of the Heart.
That was a departure from the other ones too, I guess was my point. No, I actually liked it. It did feel very reminiscent of, for example, the Marvel Netflix series. It's got that same kind of tempo as far as the song goes. I thought the artwork was cool. Again, it's not the typical like shots of the spacecraft flying through pretty scenery that we're used to with the Star Trek show, but I liked it. I didn't have any problems with it. As a general comment, real quick, I know you're dying to say something, but as a general comment, what I am relieved with, not just because of the lack of Rod Stewart here, I was actually really concerned about what the soundtrack for the show in general was going to be like, because they are following this formula of modern TV where everything is serialized, and especially in this format of like the Netflix type series. Watch anything on the Sci-Fi Channel since Battlestar came on. It's all kind of taken this particular tone, right? And one thing that I kept noticing popping up on a lot of the series on, like the WB shows or like on the Sci-Fi series is the injection of, for lack of a better term, pop music or rock songs or whatever into the soundtrack, getting rid of the traditional score. Mm-hmm. And I was super concerned that they were going to do that with this show, where every episode that comes out has like some particular song that gets played during a pivotal moment in a montage of scenes to add to the the drama or whatever. And I was very happy that they avoided that. If you want to know of a really good example of what I'm talking about, go watch Star Trek Universe or Stargate Universe. Which was a show
we could do an entire show.
I actually really liked it, but anyway,
I'm upset they pulled the plug because I want to know what happens.
I know, me too.
To the fat kid, I want to know. I
want to know what happened live.
And the
But-
hot chick. The
But
hot
you know
chick.
what I'm talking about with the song. Every episode had a song.
And
And
let
I
me.
was very glad they avoided that.
You're right in that. And let me clarify. I actually did like the visuals, the deconstructing of everything. I think that's kind of interesting because I think we're going to have a lot of that deconstruction of what it is to be Star Trek and Starfleet and all that. So I did like that. My complaint, and I also like that they started and ended with the TOS like little chimes from Alexander Courage. I like that, but I want a theme. And much like the newer superhero movies like Batman stuff, you get little pieces of it, and right when you hit the crescendo and you're thinking you're going to get a theme, the credits are over. So I was really hoping that we were going to get something orchestral, and we almost did, but it's almost like it was just cut short. And this is a streaming show. You can make a little bit longer credit.
I said that's the style of all of the Marvel Netflix shows. I can whistle the theme to DS9 and TNG, but I couldn't whistle the theme to anything I've seen for the last decade.
Well, basically it's all wah, wah, wah,
Exactly.
wah. But yeah, that was my one thing. It was because when it started, I was like, "Ooh, there's Alexander Courage. Oh, they're gonna have their own theme," and then it just like it's done. I'm like, "Oh, really? That was it? That was it?" Kevin, what do you think?
I didn't notice the music terribly much, which means it wasn't. I don't think it was terrible, but it wasn't. It really wasn't all that noteworthy to me, other than the theme. I don't even remember anything specific about it, so it just kind of mundane, but not terrible.
Okay, yeah. And I'll give it time to grow on me. I won't skip ahead when I'm watching it on the stream, even though I'm going to have the urge to, because I can do that now because I'm paying CBS to have no commercials. Thanks, CBS. And I'm actually doing it now, Mike. I upgraded.
Good.
But we'll
didn't do that, which is why I was done with it after both of you guys.
You had that little delay.
Yeah, it was only about a minute and a half per. It wasn't that big a deal.
Well, that's not bad. I mean, the worst one's Hulu. Hulu throws like 15 minutes of commercials at you. It's annoying as hell.
They do the same commercial every break.
So I want to do two things here with ranking this thing, then we'll wind this one out. First off, we're going to do what we do with a lot of our TV show rankings, and that is we're going to do a scale of 1 to 10, and I want you to rank it amongst other Star Trek episodes. So a 5 would be an average Star Trek episode. A 10 would be Best of Both Worlds or All Good Things or whatever. And then a 1 would be Cat's Paw or Threshold. The really quality stuff. So we'll go with that first, and then also while you're doing that, I want you to be thinking and Mike, you're going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage because you haven't seen one of them, but I want to get your ranking of the pilots from TOS, TNG, Voyager, D Space Nine, Enterprise, and now this, and we'll skip the animated series. But Kevin,
one.
but they didn't really have a pilot. Kevin, where would you? What score would you give the Vulcan Hello of 1 to 10?
7.
So an above
6 or
average Star
7.
Trek episode. Okay, so above average.
Yeah.
Mike, what about you?
Yeah, I'll buy it. I'm gonna give it some. I'd probably give it more like an 8. I mean, I thought it was pretty gripping, which. For the average Star Trek episode, it's almost apples and oranges, but I mean, I thought it was very good.
And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say an 8. I think it's definitely an above average episode, close to a very good episode. Of course, I think all of our rankings will be determined on how the series goes. Mm-hmm. If the series goes down the toilet, we may look back and think that this wasn't as good as we thought. But I'm pleasantly surprised because I was expecting mediocre at best. So the fact that this is going to be one that I would be happy to go back and see a couple times, I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, this is the first time when a media blackout on reviews has turned out to
really, yes. I was just looking at that. Rotten Tomatoes, because for those who didn't listen to our first episode, there was an embargo. No reviews could come out. Except for I liked it or I didn't like it. No real reviews could come out until after the airing of episode 1. So those reviews are starting to roll in. So far, Rotten Tomatoes has 20 reviews in, and it's 85% positive.
It's pretty solid.
So, and from what I'm seeing on social media, aside from my friend Chad, who hates everything, it seems like most people are liking it. One exception, and I'm trying to get him on the show, Robert. Read your emails. Robert Meyer Burnett, who actually has a little bit of history with Star Trek. He directed Free Enterprise with William Shatner. He was really involved in all of the special features for the TNG Blu-ray DVDs. And for a time, he was slated to be the director of Axanar, which I still think got killed because of this show. Robert called it in his tweet a few minutes ago, the Battlefield Earth of Star Trek. So I'm looking forward to getting Robert on the show so he can defend himself and try to defend Battlefield Earth at the same time.
Throwing around compliments like that, I don't know if I want to talk to this guy.
He's a fun guy to talk to. He'll definitely give you his opinion, though. But I'm telling you, sooner or later, the word Axanar is going to show up in this show, and I need Robert to talk about that when it happens. Okay, so all in all, above average episode. The one thing I do want to do real quick is get where you feel this ranks in the pilots. So Kevin, we'll start with you. Where would you say this ranks in all the pilots that we mentioned, which would be, for those playing the home game, Where No Man Has Gone Before, we'll skip The Cage. So Where No Man Has Gone Before, Encounter at Farpoint, The Emissary, The Caretaker, Broken Bow, and now The Vulcan Hello.
Well, by far my favorite is Broken Bow of the pilots. So I would say that one first, and then Emissary, and then probably this one, to be real honest with you. I'd go Caretaker after that. I'd go Where No Man Has Gone Before after that, and I'd go Encounter at Farpoint last, which I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of sniping about. But the first season of TNG, I don't know how that show made it. Sometimes when I watch those, and Encounter at Farpoint was really hokey.
You don't like Space Babies?
Yeah, it was real hokey. But yeah, Broken Bow by far is my favorite of the pilots.
The only thing Encounter at Farpoint had going for it really was the introduction of Q. But I agree, it doesn't hold up as much as many of the other ones do. Mike, what would you say? Of course, eliminating Broken Bow because you haven't seen it.
Right. Which sounds like I need to fix that.
But it actually is really good. But before
you really should.
That, yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm going to get the names wrong, too, so I'm just going to go by series, if that's
fine.
I'll tell you, I mean, again, to me, this is such an apples and oranges deal because this episode was so clearly the beginning of a serialized series, which means it did all kinds of build up. Yeah.
Unplug your mic and plug it back in. You're getting the under the water theme here.
Hold on.
You sound like the Little Mermaid.
I'll drop out of the hangout and come back.
Hi. Live television or podcasting. Well, while Mike's doing that, I'll go ahead and throw mine out there. I would say I agree with you, Kevin. I think Broken Bow is, as much as this, Mike, I'm just going to go ahead and do mine real quick. So as much as Enterprise Season 1 fell apart for me, Broken Bow was very much the most cinematic, even right now. Just the way it dropped you in, it got you to know the crew right away. It dealt with the issue of the Klingons and moved on to the exploration and getting them out in space. So I think Broken Bow was the best pilot of all of them still. Because of my love for Deep Space Nine, Emissary is really up there. I love the idea. Deep Space Nine was such a different show, even in Season 1 than TNG, to a point where the writers made Sisko and Picard fight each other in the first episode. I love that kind of, it wasn't a passing of the torch, it was a big F-U as they left to the other show. And then I would say this one would come up next. So number 3 for me. And then I would say Where No Man Has Gone Before. I guess The Caretaker, even though I don't like Voyager, and Encounter at Farpoint would probably be my least favorite of the pilots. So now, Mike, with your mic back, go for it.
No, I was just saying I find this really hard to do because this is such a different show. I mean, of what I have seen, quite frankly, I think I liked this one the best because it is really building me up for something that I hope turns out to be special. Although, as we'll find out, that the rest of the series probably takes maybe not a 90-degree turn, but at least some kind of an angle off the first couple episodes.
We got an off ramp coming, that's for sure.
We sure do. And then beyond that, it is tough. The two that stand out, and I'm surprised to hear you guys. Well, Kevin ranked it kind of more in the middle, but I didn't care for Voyager as a show, but I actually quite liked the pilots for Voyager. I thought it set up what was temporarily a very interesting show with a lot of interesting dynamics going on that we saw in other sci-fi series later on. What's that? I missed that.
I think, much like I said, our rankings of this may change when we get the whole season.
Yeah.
The Caretaker gave you a lot. It's like, we have Maquis stuck on a ship in the middle of the Delta Quadrant with Starfleet officers. There's going to be so much conflict. This is going to be amazing. And then within 5 episodes, the Maquis are wearing Starfleet uniforms. That's cool.
I think the series didn't live up to it, but I thought the pilot was actually rather special. And to me, DS9 almost did the opposite. The DS9 pilot was cool because it did set up such a different environment. I was never a huge fan of the whole emissary plot line in DS9 personally, so there were elements that were good and elements that were bad for me. I did again like the immediate setup that Sisko and Picard are not the same dude. You know, just like the Enterprise and Deep Space Nine couldn't have been more different from one another. So,
Yeah, it's not the pilot, but again, I'm just a Deep Space Nine fanboy. In the one episode with Q from Deep Space Nine Season 1, Q's doing some kind of weird boxing match thing, and Sisko just punches him in the face. Yeah. And he said, "You hit me. Picard never hit me." And Sisko goes, "I'm not Picard." I was like, hey!
Yeah, and so again, it was almost to me it was almost more of an interesting pilot than a necessarily really good one. And then after that, I honestly could care less. I guess I would echo the sentiment that TOS and then TNG, because Encounter at Farpoint was it was something.
I will say this though.
That makes an excellent point. I don't know how much you guys know about how Encounter at Farpoint was written, but apparently it was. The Encounter at Farpoint episode was written with all the Farpoint stuff, and then someone else came in later and said, "Yeah, this is terrible, so we're adding in the Q part of it." Mm-hmm. And if they had had the good sense to be like, "Yeah, that's way better. Let's just do that," it probably would have been a lot better, pilot.
And that's what I was going to say too. If you go back and watch All Good Things, I think All Good Things makes Encounter at Farpoint much better than what it was, because. Yep. And I wish TNG would have had the guts to do this throughout the show. Was humanity was on trial the entire 7 seasons. We never saw that, except for maybe 3 or 4 episodes. But that would have been an amazing plot thread to go from Encounter at Farpoint to All Good Things and having the trial end. And that would have been... So I did appreciate that.
It felt weird to throw Q into the first episode, I thought, because to me that is one of those things that is such a... I don't know if you would call it hard sci-fi, but it's such a difficult concept to throw at a viewer, right? It's like there's an entity in the universe that is basically all powerful, and you just need to accept it. You know, it was very Doctor Who-ish in a way.
Thank you, Mike. You remind me of something. I do have to congratulate you, Mike. Speaking of Doctor Who. I usually am the only one who gets hate mail on this show, but you got some hate mail.
Oh, good.
And I was going to mention this at the beginning, but I forgot. So thank you for mentioning Doctor Who. In the last episode, Mike said that he's going to give Doctor Who about 3 tit jokes before he gets the woman doctor off his list of things he's interested about. And so somebody wrote back and said, how many dick jokes did you give the males before you had to write them off for gender equality. So you pissed off some people about your Doctor Who comments here.
Well, I'm so sorry about that.
You did make one reference in this show to male genitalia as well.
I did.
There's more hate mail forthcoming.
Shame on me.
We do know Mike has a one-track mind. It's okay.
No, the only one-track thing on my mind is how much I hate certain people in Hollywood and how they manage to ruin everything. So,
okay, well, on that note, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. For the several people actually watching this, we're going to immediately start up episode 2. So if you want to stick with us until the witching hour of midnight, stick around. But for everyone else, thank you for checking out our first full episode of this. The one thing I do want to point out is CBS All Access has finally told us that, yes, every episode will drop at 7:30 Central Standard Time. So it is our hope that we will record reviews Sunday night. So hopefully Monday morning you'll be able to see those in your inbox or your whatever podcasting device of choice. So if all goes well and I don't fall asleep in the middle of editing, you'll have episode 1 and episode 2 for you on Monday morning. So until next time, which will be in about 5 minutes, I'm Scott, and with me has been
Mike.
Mike, Kevin, and Mike.
There you go.
Sorry.
And until next time, we will see you on the couch, and live long and prosper, or peace and long life, whatever you prefer.